Imagine walking into your own business, something you've poured your heart, money, and years of hard work into, only to be told you don't belong. That's exactly what happened to this successful Black CEO when she tried to check into her own luxury hotel, and the front desk refused to give her a room. At first, she thought it was a simple mistake, maybe a mix-up in the reservation, but the look on the clerk's face said otherwise. He didn't recognize her as the owner. Instead, he treated her like someone who didn't deserve to be there at all. No matter how calmly she tried to explain, he just wouldn't listen. And when she insisted, things took a shocking turn. But what the staff didn't know was that they had just messed with the wrong person. This CEO wasn't about to let it slide. She had worked too hard to be dismissed in her own establishment. So, right then and there, she decided to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. What happened next left everyone in the lobby speechless. The hotel staff, completely stunned, and the clerk, well, let's just say he instantly regretted his actions. Stay tuned, because this story is about to take a turn no one saw coming. The room fell silent. Guests in the lobby paused their conversations, sensing the tension in the air. The CEO, standing tall in front of the front desk, took a deep breath, her patience wearing thin. She had built this hotel from the ground up, choosing every detail with care, from the elegant chandeliers to the marble floors beneath her feet. Yet here she was, being treated like a stranger, like she didn't belong. The clerk, a young man with a stiff posture, kept his expression firm. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, glancing at the computer screen as if looking for an excuse. "I don't see your name on the reservation list. If you don't have a booking, I can't give you a room." His voice was cold, dismissive. She studied his face. It wasn't just about a missing reservation. She had seen this kind of behavior before, the hesitation, the assumptions. Instead of causing a scene, she simply pulled out her phone and made a call. The moment the person on the other end picked up, her voice was calm but firm. "I need you to come to the front desk. Now." The clerk frowned, confused. The other employees whispered among themselves. Who was this woman? And why did she sound like she had the power to change everything? The air in the lobby grew heavier as the seconds ticked by. The CEO kept her eyes locked on the clerk, who shifted uncomfortably behind the desk. He still had no idea who she was, but something in her voice, the way she carried herself, made him nervous. Guests nearby stole glances, sensing something unusual was unfolding. Moments later, the elevator doors slid open, and a sharply dressed man stepped out. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor as he made his way toward the front desk. The hotel manager. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her, then widened in shock. "Ma'am, he stammered, his entire demeanor changing. The clerk looked between them, confused. The CEO crossed her arms, waiting. She didn't need to say a word. The manager swallowed hard and turned to the clerk. "Do you know who this is?" he asked, his voice tight. The young man shook his head, glancing at her again, searching for some clue. "This is the owner of this hotel." The words hit like a thunderclap. The color drained from the clerk's face. His confident stance crumbled as realization dawned. The CEO finally spoke, her voice even. "Would you like to explain why I was just denied a room in my own hotel?" Silence. No one dared to move. The real lesson was just beginning. The lobby felt frozen in time. The clerk's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. His hands hovered over the keyboard as if searching for something, an excuse, an explanation, but there was nothing he could say to fix what had just happened. The manager's face was tight with panic. He turned to the CEO, his voice urgent but careful. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. If I had known you were arriving." She held up a hand, silencing him. "It's not about whether you knew I was coming," she said, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "It's about why I wasn't given the same respect as any other guest." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. The guests who had been eavesdropping now exchanged glances. The front desk staff stood stiffly, unsure of what to do. The clerk's breath quickened. He finally found his voice, but it was shaky. I didn't know, he muttered. I was just following policy. Policy? The CEO's eyebrows lifted slightly. Tell me, what part of your policy says I should be dismissed without so much as checking the system properly? The clerk swallowed hard. He knew there was no way out of this. The silence stretched, the tension unbearable. Then, the CEO took a slow step forward. You made a choice today, she said, her eyes never leaving his. And now you're going to see the consequences of that choice. The entire lobby was holding its breath. The moment everyone had been waiting for was just about to happen. The clerk's breathing grew uneven as the weight of the moment pressed down on him. His gaze darted toward the manager, silently begging for help, but none came. The CEO's eyes never wavered from him, her presence commanding the entire room. The tension was thick, and just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse for him, someone else stepped forward. A woman, dressed in a sleek business suit, emerged from the crowd. She had been sitting quietly in the lobby, watching everything unfold with keen interest. Now she cleared her throat, drawing all eyes to her. The clerk's face paled even more when he recognized her. I was supposed to have a meeting with the owner today, the woman said, her voice smooth yet firm. But after witnessing this, I think we need to reconsider our business deal. Murmurs spread through the lobby. Some guests turned to each other in shock. The manager flinched, his expression darkening with realization. The CEO didn't break eye contact with the clerk as she spoke. That's interesting, she mused, because this meeting was about expanding our hotel partnerships. She turned to the woman, her voice steady. And now you're questioning whether we should work together at all. The businesswoman nodded slowly, her gaze flickering to the still speechless clerk. If this is how your staff treats people, I need to be sure we're aligned in values before moving forward. A new layer of pressure dropped onto the room. The consequences were no longer just personal. They were business, reputation, and future growth at stake. The clerk's hands trembled slightly. He had thought he was just dealing with a guest. He had no idea his mistake had cost the company millions. And just when it seemed like the worst had happened, the CEO turned to the manager with a question that made the entire lobby go silent. So tell me, what happens next? The manager swallowed hard, knowing all eyes were on him. He turned to the CEO, his voice measured but laced with unease. Ma'am, I take full responsibility for this situation. This does not reflect our hotel's values. The CEO tilted her head slightly, watching him. That's easy to say now, she replied. But actions speak louder than words. The clerk, still frozen in place, finally found the courage to speak. Please, he stammered. I didn't realize. She held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. You didn't realize who I was, and that's exactly the problem. The weight of her words crushed whatever excuse he was about to make. His shoulders slumped. Then she turned to the businesswoman who had been watching with sharp eyes. I appreciate your concerns, the CEO said, and I understand if you want to walk away from our deal. The businesswoman studied her for a moment, then smiled. Actually, I was hoping to see how you'd handle this, she admitted, and I have to say, I'm impressed. The CEO raised an eyebrow. So, we're still talking? Absolutely. A wave of relief passed through the manager, but the CEO wasn't done. She turned back to him. Now, about your staff. The clerk's breath hitched. He knew what was coming. He braced for the worst. But instead of firing him on the spot, the CEO did something no one expected. You have a choice, she said. You can walk away from this job right now, or you can enroll in our mandatory leadership and diversity training program. Then, when you complete it, we'll see if you're truly ready to represent this brand. The entire lobby held its breath. The clerk blinked, stunned. He had expected anger, punishment, maybe even security escorting him out. But instead, she was giving him a second chance. His voice cracked as he answered, Hi, I'd like to take the training. The CEO nodded. Good. Then let this be a lesson, not just for you, but for everyone here. She glanced around the room, her voice firm. Respect isn't about who someone appears to be. It's about how you treat every person who walks through these doors. The tension in the air finally broke. The guests who had been watching nodded in quiet agreement. The businesswoman gave an approving nod, and the manager, he exhaled in sheer relief. Then, with a final glance at the stunned clerk, the CEO picked up her suitcase and headed toward the elevator. The lesson had been delivered, and no one in that lobby would ever forget it. As the elevator doors slid shut behind her, the CEO took a deep breath. She had built this hotel to be a place of luxury, yes, but more importantly, a place where every guest was treated with dignity. Today had been a reminder that even in her own business, she still had work to do. Down in the lobby, the energy slowly shifted. The guests who had witnessed the moment whispered among themselves, some nodding in approval. The clerk stood frozen, the reality of what had just happened settling in. He had been given a second chance, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. He would have to prove that he was willing to change. The businesswoman, still standing near the front desk, turned to the manager with a smirk. "Well," she said, "that was certainly more interesting than I expected." The manager let out a nervous chuckle. "You have no idea." Upstairs, the CEO entered her suite, her own this time. As she set her bag down, she allowed herself a small smile. Some lessons were uncomfortable, but they were necessary. And in the end, this wasn't just about her. It was about changing the culture. One moment, one person, one decision at a time.